It's very easy to make a mistake in the watch world. And if you make a mistake, you pay for the mistake.
I don't understand why
What is up, Watch fam? My name is Michael. Usually Christian sits over here to my left. He is not here. He is at Geneva at Watches and Wonders. And today we're talking about possibly the biggest blunder at Watches and Wonders 2023, the unforgivable overpriced watch. Possibly overpriced. I want to get your opinion. I don't want to, well, I might form your opinion, but who knows. Either way, we are talking IWC, which a very good friend of mine, loves the Ingenieur. The IWC Ingenieur. It's a very famous watch. We'll get into it in a second. Loves it. Has been sending me links to ones that he thinks he's going to buy for months. And I've always been saying, pull the trigger, buy the watch. Just pull the trigger, buy the watch. And he didn't buy the watch, but he is in Geneva. He is at Watches and Wonders. And I saw Bark and Jack release a video about the new Ingenieur that just got released by IWC. And I thought, oh my, this is perfect. This is perfect. I can't believe this. I texted my friend. I said, they released the Ingenieur. He was making this really big stink about the fact that he wanted to go get a watch from Watches and Wonders or just from Geneva because he's there for the first time. He's a huge watch nerd. It's an honor to be hired to go film there. And I was like, this is perfect. This is literally your dream. It's probably like $5,000 or $6,000. That's in the range that you were willing to spend. Great. And then I found out the price, and I actually watched the Bark and Jack video and was like, this is a really nice watch. I have some thoughts about the old one versus the new one. And then I saw the comments, and all of the comments were kind of brutal. And then I went to Hodinkee and I read the Hodinkee article, and all the comments there were brutal about this watch, which I would say is really gorgeous and a great alternative to a lot of watches that you can get and even more watches that you can't get. But the price is what makes it really interesting, because then all of a sudden you're met with the fact of, well, what is this an alternative to? Which is what we'll get into today. What's up, everyone? Good to greet you again. I know I did that at the beginning of the video. Christian's not here, so I can talk about whatever I want. Let's start off with what IWC released. They released the IW328901, the Ingenieur Automatic 40. I think it's a beautiful watch. It comes in titanium, it comes in steel. I would probably go with titanium just because I really like new materials. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm wearing steel right now and my wrist is so heavy because my other watch is titanium. This is the Ingenieur that they released, 40 millimeters in diameter, 120 hour power reserve, which is fantastic. This is the caliber 32111, which is also in the Mark 20. I thought it was completely in-house. Apparently it's not. It's a Richemont owned modified ETA movement. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and I bet I am wrong. But I thought it was 100% in-house. Apparently it's not. But two really great things for me with this watch is that it's only around 10 millimeters thick and it has 100 meters water resistance. And 40 millimeters is kind of a big watch on my tiny wrist, but this has end links that go straight down, so it wears a little smaller than what you typically see out of a non-end link going down watch. For example, the old Speedmaster bracelet made the Speedmaster wear way, way larger than the new Speedmaster bracelet. This being an Ingenieur, and really just more generally, this being an IWC, there is a soft iron inner cage on the inside to protect the movement from magnetism, which we'll get into with the history of the Ingenieur in a second. But what's interesting is I feel like that's kind of phased out from most watches nowadays. Nowadays they use parts that are amagnetic, so it doesn't particularly matter if there is a soft iron inner cage or not. But if you know why they still use one, please let me know. Anyways, I did want to preface all of this by saying that I am actually a huge fan of IWC designs. I had the IWC 36 automatic with a gray dial for a little bit. I love the Mark 20. I actually love the Portofino collection. That's one of the things that I like, that people say, oh wow, you're the person that likes that collection. I think it looks beautiful. But yeah, pretty big fan of IWC designs, not always a big fan of IWC prices, but at some points I feel like it is fair. At some points. The Mark 20, I think, is pretty fairly priced. Obviously, I'd love to see it come down in price a little bit, just because then it's cheaper. But I really think, especially, well, we'll use the Mark 20 because that's what's IWC without the Mark line. But the Mark 20, $6,100 or $6,200 technically on bracelet is a fantastic deal, I think, at least. I would love to pick one of these up, and eventually I just may. And I think the Pilot's watch design is a super big winner, but this video is about the Ingenieur, so we'll get back to that. So the first IWC Ingenieur was released in 1955. The reference 666 had a very anti-magnetic movement. This is when the soft iron inner cage was introduced, so this was really a working watch. Working as in like you're on the job site. It's called the Ingenieur, the Engineer watch, but anti-magnetic, shock resistant. It's a watch that you should wear every day. It also looks nothing like the Ingenieurs that we're talking about today because Gerald Genta, the famous man that also made the Royal Oak and the Nautilus and the Pole Router and this Ingenieur, made this Ingenieur. Which is kind of odd because, I feel like there probably was a point where Gerald Genta was like, is anybody noticing that I'm essentially making the same watch and just changing the shape of the bezel? Or is this fine? And I think it's fine. I think it worked. And then Hublot was like, we'll just do the Ingenieur on rubber and that should work fine. And it did. Anyways, though, the reference 1832, the Gerald Genta redesign, was from 1976, and it was called the Jumbo, because it was actually a pretty large watch. It was 40 millimeters. And the original launch of the watch was not that popular. I think it sold under 1,000 units. Then Genta redesigned it, and IWC rolled with it. Then they stopped rolling with it. Then they re-rolled with it. Then they did an Ingenieur that looked nothing like the Genta edition. And then they re-released the Genta edition looking Ingenieur, which just, I think that was part of the mistake. The Nautilus was made and it stayed the Nautilus and it was incrementally changed. The Royal Oak was made and then it incrementally changed. And then obviously you see the Ingenieur kind of tried to follow that trend with IWC and AP, like AP released the Offshore. IWC released an Ingenieur that kind of looked like an Offshore. It kind of never got its footing, but I don't know if I blame the watch particularly. Maybe I guess I kind of do. Maybe the initial launch of the watch, it was too big. It was also during the quartz crisis, and it wasn't Patek and AP, it was IWC, which was a little different. But then I kind of blame IWC for not sticking with the design that they liked. It kind of seems like they're more flexible around trying to figure out what is going to sell. And the Genta design obviously worked with the Royal Oak, so it should work for them. That is me completely guessing. I know nothing about how IWC works on the inside. It's a wild guess.
If you love watches, like I do, if you think that they mean something more than the time, then head on over to theoandharris.com and shop our selection of vintage watches and handmade straps. They're unique and they're special, and once they're gone for good.
So this is where things get interesting because I really like the SL. I think it's beautiful. My friend really likes the SL. Everybody, I think, thinks the SL is a great looking watch. They improved upon it, kind of, in this 2023 re-release. It does look like it went to the gym. It's a little worked out. It's a little bigger, a little chunkier. I would have liked it if they kept it super slim, as in the actual case shape, not the actual thickness of the watch, because it is a slim watch. I would have liked it slim, but like I said before, the links do hang down perfectly near the actual watch case, which makes it wear smaller. I would have also liked if they didn't have crown guards, a little bit more faithful to the original. So if we're looking for an Ingenieur, like my friend once was, we look at the 3508, for example. One pops up, $9,800. It's beautiful, it's automatic, 34 millimeters, if you want that size. It's great. $9,800. Kind of expensive, but not crazy. There's also the Ingenieur Slim or thin version. I forget what they called it. It's the quartz version, so if you don't like quartz, this is really not going to be your cup of tea, but it's even slimmer, and I see one right now for $4,400. Again, great price. Then we can go to this crazy IWC Ingenieur calendar, 18 karat gold 3540-1. There is one I see for $30,000, but then there's one a little bit lower for $16,500. This watch, to me, is just absolutely stunning. I wish IWC was running this watch right now. It is unbelievable. IWC has some of the best deals that you'll ever find because some watches just didn't get too popular. Can you imagine if the 3540-1 was an AP or a Patek? this watch would go for a ton more money. Obviously, it's AP or Patek, but still, that's cool. These are the cool things that you find with IWC. And then we go to the 9238 in solid gold this one's for 19,000, but this is pure Ingenieur, original looking design. Beautiful watch. $19,000 comes at a hefty price. Then finally, there's only one more. You find these oddity Ingenieurs since IWC was shifting things around so much. This one I don't even have a reference for. I just found it searching for the Ingenieur. $3,600, chronograph. It's quartz, so that's kind of a bummer. But just a beautiful solid gold chronograph with a really cool end link. Fantastic watch. $3,600, like I said. So the issue that we're faced with is that IWC made a beautiful Ingenieur that I'm sure a lot of people like and want. And like I said, I told my friend, great, it's probably like $5 to $6 grand, maybe $7 grand, $8 grand on the high end. Like, and maybe it could be a tiny bit out of your budget, but it's exactly what you're looking for. It's 2023. It's the year you went to Watches and Wonders. Like, this is your watch. But it turns out this is a $12,000 watch or a $15,000 watch if you get it in titanium. That doesn't make it any less beautiful. That it's still a beautiful, fantastic watch that I'm sure plenty of people are going to buy and be very happy with. And it's interesting because a lot of the comments that I were reading were people being like, this doesn't make any sense. The movement doesn't command this type of price. XYZ doesn't command this type of price. But what's interesting is that if it's an alternative to an Explorer or something else that's Explorer-like, an OP or something like that, if we're focused on Rolex, it's different and it's not really a good deal if that's what it's an alternative to. But I don't obviously think that's what it's an alternative to. I think it's an alternative to what it's always been an alternative to. How many times did I just say alternative to? And that, I believe, would be the Royal Oak or the Nautilus, which obviously those two watches command a much higher price and they're harder to get. So if you're looking for an alternative, I feel like you probably would look towards the Ingenieur. You'd also look towards Hublot, which is probably a weird thing to say, but obviously Hublot does not have the same rep as IWC, which does not have the same rep as AP and Patek. But if you're looking for that style, the Classic Fusion is kind of what you're going to be looking at. And it's $7,400. So I feel like the IWC Ingenieur tried to place itself as not AP, not Patek, not an Explorer, obviously, but also not Hublot. Like, it's right in the middle, and that's what we're gonna go after. So if someone's asking me, is it too expensive? For me, it's too expensive. For my friend, it's probably too expensive. But interestingly, I bet there are a lot of people out there that wanted an AP or Patek style watch. They didn't want to spend AP or Patek prices, but they would spend 12 grand. And then I feel like the Ingenieur is perfect for them. So those are my thoughts. That's how I think IWC was trying to place it. It's obviously not being received very well, so we will see if it is successful or not. But I'm interested in hearing what you thought. And please, obviously I think the majority of you are gonna say it's overpriced, but if someone wants to play devil's advocate in the comments, go off, justify it, because I'll be reading them. Although I usually only read comments for 15 minutes, but then if someone gets mean, it really messes with my head, so then I stop reading them. But I'll peek every now and then. Anyways, thank you so much. If you do like vintage watches, check out the Theo and Harris watch shop. There's not an Ingenieur in there right now, but there is a bunch of Rolex, Cartier, Omega, Piaget. Piaget's going on the rise, so Christian bought a bunch of those. But anyways, I will see you very soon. I have no idea when this video will be posted, but Christian is also coming back soon. Goodbye.